My name's Monk Rowe, and I'm very pleased to have Ray Blue with me this afternoon, connecting from Peekskill to Clinton, New York. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Monk. It's a pleasure to be here.
I remember fondly your visit to Hamilton, and I've been recently listening to some of your recordings, and I want to say I very much dig your sound.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
One thing I like is believe it or not, it reminded me a little bit of Whitney Houston when you take a long tone and you play it straight as an arrow and then you add some vibrato near the end.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
How did you fashion your sound when you were a young man? Did you have um, some mentors or was it mostly just listening to recordings?
It was mostly listening, but fortunately, when you say young man, I'm thinking back to high school because that's when I started to play in the combo playing out. But the idea that was taught, the concept that was taught was that it's important to finish a note, and I was told to listen to how certain people finish their notes. They may be you don't play vibrato all the way through. You use it to put a tasty inflection on the end. That's how it was described to me.
That's a great concept, and uh, I'm not sure that I could do better with that with my own students. How to end a note. Sometimes I tell them to end a long note with a little exclamation point or an accent or something. It sort of justifies playing a long note or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. How you finish determines how the how the beginning of the note actually comes across,
Yeah.
and then how the next note will impact the listener.
I read that while you were playing in the school jazz band, that you were also you were in an R&B group.
Yes, yeah,
Do you
yeah.
remember how did you learn your parts?
From records, from records. Although that was learned from records, Junior Walker in the All Stars. Who else were we doing? We did at that time. Mercy Mercy came out. Cannonball Adderley Group came out. We did the Motown stuff. I listened to the parts. I knew the melodies, and you would listen to them. You knew the rhythms, how the rhythm section worked, and you just learned those things. Uh, you could sing all the parts. You know,
You can't beat that. That's the best ear training.
yeah, it is.
Um,
I think so. Yeah.
this might sound like an odd question, but at that time when you were learning those parts, did you have a sense of the lines and the notes you were playing, how it related to the key that the song was in?
Hmm. Well, that was before I had any understanding of theory, or much understanding of theory. It fit. It fit. It fit within. I could hear the chords. I could hear the chords, and then I could hear how the notes or the lines I was playing fit inside the chord. I could hear if there was too much dissonance or it didn't, or if I felt like it was a wrong note. It didn't fit. But there was always a blend to hear.
Hmm.
The lines and the harmonies and the melody.
Was there another horn player to work into the mix?
At that time, no, no, I was the only horn player in the group at that time. Yeah,
Yeah, give it to Ray. He'll do a solo here.
yeah, that's how it went.
Do you remember your first paying gig and what you made?
Yes, I do remember. Um, One of our staunch supporters English teacher, Mr. John Sullivan. He ran the night school, and downstairs in the high school, and he had us come to play for his group. Now we only knew three tunes, starting out, and yeah, we got paid 15, 50. I think it was what? No, was it $6 a piece? Yeah, because they took up a collection. Yeah.
You beat me. You beat me by $2. A same situation, like in a high school. That's great. What was the name of this band?
The Soul Sextet.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, jumping ahead a little bit, um, apparently you heard "Kind of Blue" played for you by a seventh grade teacher,
Yes.
and that was it.
It
Did
was.
you? What made the biggest impression on you?
Oh, the biggest impression of that. It grabbed me, Monk. Um, he turned the music on, and I listened. And what was there? Well, the first tune was "So What" on the record was "So What," and the introduction and the bass, that the free bass line that was there, then into the melody, and it just and Jimmy Cobb's on the cymbal, and it was on, man. It yeah, that's what grabbed me, you know, and there's no other explanation.
When you heard "Cannonball" followed by "Coltrane," were you at the point? This is seventh grade now. Can you recall a preference or distinguishing one from the other?
I didn't have a preference. However, my ear gravitated more to the tenor sound.
Hmm.
Um, and actually, yeah, yeah. I really got to no, no. They were both. I was in junior high when I was listening to both of them, because what I did was I had the opportunity to join the Columbia Record Club, and we 10 albums for 99 cents, and then they send you a new one each month, and then you take it or not. But records that I bought, I got Kind of Blue. I got one of them by Stan Getz, um with Dear Old Stockholm, um Cannonball Adderley, Coltrane was Grand Central, but a little lap, but a little lap. No, no, that's the bridge. But and then what's and then um, my high school, one of my high school music teachers gave me a copy of Giant Steps, the album, and yeah. So, but the distinction, the tenor sound, I was more gravitated more towards the tenor. I still love the alto sound. Cannon had it. He spoke. The way he spoke was just amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan as well, and he had that tone that sort of leapt off the record.
Yeah, he did. His tone would his sound would lift you. It would lift you off. If you were standing, it lifted you off your feet. If you were sitting, it lifted you off your chair. It's just amazing. Um, for me, I could hear heaven in that sound. Yeah, it's amazing.
At what point did you get the notion or the possibility that you could make music your career or your destination? Because I see that you received a bachelor's and a master's in sociology,
Hmm.
and here you are now as a professional musician. Did you have a conflict in your head about where you were going to go?
Somewhat. Well, not where I was gonna end up, but how I get here. Well, here's how it went. I was offered music scholarships out of high school, and but there was something I didn't take them because there were other things I wanted to learn, and I said, and that's how that's how I thought about it. So I studied social psych, and then in grad school I went into clinical social work. And when I got to grad school, that's when I actually really started to bear down and start studying saxophones more, because that was it. Um, and that's how that went.
Now, when I read that, I got this flashback to I was fortunate to interview Phil Woods, and he said, well, jazz career. Let me put it this way. If you're trying to decide between a career as a brain surgeon or a jazz or tenor man, he literally said tenor man. He goes, be the brain surgeon.
Yeah, yeah. That's what some people would say. I know a person who said he gave up music to make a living. But one of the things my mentor in grad school, and I believe all the things we learn in life are transferable to any situation. You know, she told me, she said, "Look, you can do anything you want to do as long as you can justify it." And I applied that the same way. I knew what I wanted to do, and then I knew I didn't take the traditional route by going to music school, etc., studying music. But I knew this is what I was going to do, and so I began studying, and I was at the University of Iowa, and then I came back to New York and started hanging out and got with musicians, started studying and practicing a lot, and started getting with different bands. Um, and and it was just a matter of time before I was going to shift from what I was doing as a clinical social worker into music full time.
So you were helping to pay your bills by doing what you had studied
Mm-hmm.
while you were transitioning into
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I still love the work. See, that was the thing. I had a passion for what I was doing there too.
Hmm.
And I feel blessed in that manner. There are two aspects of work that I chose that I have a passion for, and uh, I've been able to use both in different instances. I created some music therapy work, and working with young people around music, and so that was a real pleasure too. You know, so making these strides and doing the things I needed to do to get my skill level up, get my my jazz education, music educational uh, piece together. I did all that stuff. I'm still learning, man. And I love it. I love it. The more I'm learning, there's more I'm seeing that I want to learn more of. And I'm in a network in a circle playing with a lot of great musicians,
Hmm.
really good people, and I'm happy.
Can't do better than that.
No, I don't think so.
I understand you spent a good deal of time in Europe. In fact, um, in reading about you, I believe it said you heard kind of blue in seventh grade, and then you knew you wanted to go to Europe to play jazz.
Yeah.
So why? Why did you, at that early age, have this idea that Europe was going to be significant?
One of the records I got from the Columbia Record Club was Miles Davis in Europe, and I played on my little hi-fi, and you could hear how the music in the audience, the musicians in the audience, just came together. They were somewhere in France because I remember the announcer, the words, the announcement was in French, and I just had that dream. That's what I want to do. And I was 12. That's what I wanted to do, and I didn't know how I was going to get it done, but that was the goal, the dream.
Mm-hmm.
And so I moved over there in 2000. I made a an exploratory trip over in 90 in the fall of 1999, and then I made another trip over in the spring of 2000. And I had a gig. I had some gigs over there anyway. I was working with another band, and I was working with the Spirit of Life Ensemble at the time too, and we were doing things mostly in France. But I was there, and I made my way into Germany and Switzerland. I'd met different people, and I was mapping out a plan. And I was back, I think maybe a week, and I got a phone call, and I was invited to come and play some festivals with some folks in Switzerland in September. So that was I believe it was in May, end of May, beginning of June. I got the call, and the dates went in the book, and that was it. So I left on September 20th, uh, 2000. I had a saxophone, a suitcase, and a promise of 3 gigs, and I and that was it, man.
Oh, that's, I salute you.
Yeah, and from that way, I made my way. That was it, man. I figured out how I was going to do it, and that was it.
I wonder if you ran into Alvin Queen over in Switzerland.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But Alvin and I had met some years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
One of my dearest friends and mentors, Dr. Jesse Johnson. I met Alvin through him, um, and Dr. Johnson gave me my first Mark 6 back it's in 1957. Yeah, it's 57 of my Mark 6, and he said, "Look, man, it's time for me to pass this on because you're going to take this further than I can go anymore." And that's
Wow.
how, yeah, and I still have it. And her name is Baby. Yeah, but I met him through yeah, I met Alvin through Dr. Johnson. I met uh, Art Davis, the great Art Davis bassist Art Davis. I met Stanley Cowell through him, and yeah.
I'm not sure how to phrase this question, but due to your study in psychology, do you think that you play to the audience or to an audience member more than other musicians?
More than I don't know about more than.
I guess what I'm picturing is some musicians, you see them and they're on the stage and their eyes are closed, and I get the impression that they are playing totally for themselves. Not that it's not, this is not a judgmental thing, but then
Mhm,
I see other musicians who seem to be a little more aware of their surroundings and who they're playing for.
mhm. Well, yeah, it's well. I learned this too, that it's we're not playing merely for ourselves. We're playing for a listener, and we're communicating. The music is a language that we're communicating with one another. There's a connection between the audience and the artist, and I I I feel that it's important to to connect with that. That's an important part. It's part of what fuels um, what comes out. You know, it's important. So that's how I view it. You know, that's how I view it. Yeah, we practice a lot, and you know, all these different things that we want to do as musicians and feel with, you know, with the camaraderie on stage. But the ultimate part is that we're all communicating with one another to communicate with our listener.
I remember seeing Cannonball. I think I saw him in live about 3 times, and that was a big part of what he did. Is that even before he played, he had a welcoming um, delivery to the audience. He made you want to listen harder, and sometimes gave you a little information about the tunes and so forth. That I tried to remember that as a worthwhile thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's like a preacher, and you know, or a very astute professor. Yeah, he what he had to say, and his voice was one that uh, he spoke so well, and it was a part of. It was also a part of. It was all a part of his presentation, the music and all. You know, I like to. I've adopted some of that. Yeah, uh, sharing some information, a little storytelling, reflecting on things that are going on stage with us, or between us in the audience. Sure, man. That's connecting with an audience, man, is so important. I believe. You know,
Yeah.
some folks they just get up and start playing, play great, and everything in the audience connects with them. My thing is to connect from a personal, you know, with some verbiage as well.
Yeah. I was happy to see that you recorded da 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 ba da 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 da.
Yeah,
Sweet Emma.
yes, yeah, Sweet Emma. It was, yeah. That's another great tune in it, and the story behind it is great as well. Because Emma was one of those persons who, a woman in you know in the man's world who made her presence, it was something else. You know, and she not only a great player, but a dynamic person, personality. Uh, that uh, song was written about her.
Hmm.
You know, and so yeah, it had a strong, sassy swing thing to it, and that did a great job.
He did. This may not seem like a big deal, but you recorded Everything Happens to Me.
Hmm.
And the whole first statement of the melody, it's just you and the drums. Am I correct?
Yes.
To me, that is such a terrific thing to do, and not many people, if they even think of doing it, they wouldn't do it anyway. And I think it's worth noting from an arranger's standpoint that within a quartet, you've got all these possibilities of combinations.
Hmm.
So I'm just wanted to say I'm glad you did it.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, one of those things that happened. You know, we planned for things, and this is just one that said, you know, let's try this. I want to try this. So we did it, and Steve Johns, who was on the drum track on that, you know, Steve is an amazing cat to work with in the studio. You know, his studio skills are second to none. Really, you know, he's a great cat playing live with, but in the studio, his experience and knowledge, and the way he connects. I keep using that word, but it's really a relevant term. The way he connects with me, or the person that's doing the lead, he's right there. He's right there. You know, and he's sensitive to each breath I take. He feels the emotion where it's leading. He speaks very well and supports. He's a great musician. You know.
Yes, and in the studio, it's interesting you mention that because sometimes we can be separated. Drummer might be in a booth or something, so they really have to be tuned in from their ears.
In that particular case, he was in a room next to me, and we could see one another.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 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 and that worked too. So so that's the deal.
Yeah.
That's how that came about.
What's the average time? I don't know if you can estimate this, but on your own recordings, how much studio time do you usually get?
Uh, well, I would start out with I would start out with probably a 10-hour block, um, and uh, and then work it from there. Some folks go in and then they say, "All right, they're going to record all the tracks." Da, da, da. I way I prefer to do it is that we'll do as many tracks as it feels good with. If the energy dissipates or something, it's time to stop, and we stop, and then come back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, that's it. That's it. I'll start with 10 hours, and then we have time to go over a couple things if we feel like it.
Yeah.
You do listening, and you say, yeah, well, I like to do that a little bit. Then we'll do it again, do a track again. But when it's there, you hear it, and then you can move on to the next.
When it comes time to mix, uh, are the other members around, or do you find it better to have as few people as possible in on that process?
No, no, I'm not having any other cats. Everybody hears their own.
Everybody wants to push up their fader.
Yeah, it's the engineer, the producer, and myself.
Yeah.
That's enough. That's enough. Yeah. It's funny. You know how that goes.
No one ever says, "Hey, I think I'm a little too loud."
Yeah. On this most recent recording, I called in Bobby Sanabria to lay some tracks, and now Bobby's another phenomenal one. Wow, wow. And then he'd come in. I gave him. I sent him the music ahead of time, and he came in with his notes and the markings on there on the pages, and then he'd go in and he'd lay his track. He'd come in and listen and say, I think so, and he could pinpoint certain things, and he said, and to go back and bam, he'll hit it, and it's done. And then he said, all right, now I hear this to go in, and he'll have another percussive instrument, etc. And uh, then when we do the final listen before he leaves, you know, uh, I love you, Bobby. Well, we have to do. Okay, sure, Bobby. Yeah, Bobby. Yeah. A little addition, add a little. Okay, Bobby. But he's right in so many senses because you fine tune. But what he does is he's hearing these things, and uh, they're really fine points. Usable points. And so when it came time to start the mixing, bam, it was in there, and all we had to do was fine tune it.
Okay.
You know, uh, the yeah, Bobby came because Bobby's has so much energy. He goes on and on because he's a perfectionist and he hears everything.
Okay.
He hears how it works with the drummer, where the accent is falling with the bass player. You know, on which beat of the measure. Or which subdivision part of the measure. Those kind of, yeah, where the piano player is rhythmically playing.
Mm.
So that his what he's doing it works to enhance because that's his job, you know. So yeah, that was it was great working with him as well.
All right. Let's talk about the blues. Do you have um, a definition of your own? Maybe because maybe I want to borrow it. I'm in about a week. I'm doing a little presentation about the blues for some group, and I often struggle with a succinct but accurate definition of the blues.
Mm. A succinct and accurate definition of the blues.
Or just Ray Blue's definition
Yeah,
of
I
the
think that's
blues.
all I could give you. 'Cause
I take the pressure off.
yeah, that's nice of you. Uh, the blues. The blues is it's an it's an expression of your life experience, and that's as really as simple as I can put it. It's an expression. Now you can put that in any genre or whatever, but since we're talking about blues, it's an expression of your life experience, um, and it can pinpoint the joy, the humility, or even some sadness that you may be experiencing or have experienced that's made a mark. It touches it reflects your it reflects your spirit in the purest sense. It really does because all of the um, because for me, uh, I find the blues in all this stuff, and playing jazz and playing really playing American music. I can hear and find the blues in all of it. There's some element of it. Um, excuse me. And as a player, um, it works. It works in the different genres of American music. It's in there. Um, where you find that flat third or that raised fourth or the flatted fifth, where and how it's placed, you know, um, that's where we speak.
Well said. I wanted to share something I read recently, and this is the first opportunity I've had to share it. This is from Kurt Vonnegut, from his last book, A Man Without a Country. And I'm only slightly paraphrasing here. Kurt said, I really like Strauss and Mozart and all that, but the priceless gift that African Americans gave the whole world was a gift so great that it is now almost the only reason many foreigners still like us. All pop music today, jazz, swing, bebop, Elvis Presley, the Beatles, the Stones, rock and roll, hip hop, and on, is derived from the blues.
Yeah, it's the American experience. Blues is the American experience. Now, um, blues didn't originate in America. Blues came over from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't know if you've had the opportunity, the experience to hear some of some of the music in Africa that depicts that sound, but it's there, man, and I've heard it, and the way it developed here is a uniqueness. That's our culture, that's American culture. And I agree with what he said. This is something it has permeated and touched the rest of the world, and I believe that um, in spite of what others say or think, I believe that the rest of the world has a great appreciation for us because of the blues. You know, it's touched everybody because they can't play what they call jazz without touching the blues either. And this is a music that is just we've shared it with the world, you know, and I agree. It's one of the reasons that it gives them a reason to like us. Yeah, you
Yeah.
know. Everywhere I go, anywhere I go, and this has been in any country that I've been in, um, we're treated differently. We're treated respectfully because we play the music. Okay, I think something that, and that's just something to think about. Uh, we are. I don't know if we're the only country, um, uh, modern country, who doesn't have a ministry of culture. Okay, all these Western European countries have a ministry of culture where artists are supported. You know, it's built into their culture. Ours is built in differently. You know, there's a whole. I don't know if you know. You understand what I'm saying? They have a ministry of culture. It's part of the government system.
Hmm.
So if an artist, if that's how important uh, arts culture is, in that if you're having hard times earning money, you can get government support because you're an artist to help sustain you to continue to do what you do because you contribute something that's valuable. You know, we have to go about it another way here in America. We have to find support from other places. You know, and we have to look for them. It's not offered to us because we're artists. We have to find it and then make application for it. Da, 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 da. We have to find supporters and entrepreneurs and philanthropists to help us through. It's not like that totally in a lot of other places, and I equate that to how they respect the necessity for art within their culture.
Jazz, in particular, in the last 30 or so years, has been elevated, rightfully so, in academia and Jazz at Lincoln Center, on and on. It doesn't seem to translate to a place in the marketplace. It's a bit of a conundrum, it seems like.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, it is. However, we find a way to make it work. You know, there's one thing that's said about the human condition, and that is people will get used to anything. Right. So our situation, okay, that's what it is. I'm used to it, and here's what I do to make it work for me to continue to do what I do. That's how I look at it. It's the condition, and I have to adapt to the condition. Otherwise, I don't exist, and I'm not having that. You know. So we find a way to make things work. I created a not for profit organization, 501(c)(3), um, and we don't get a lot of we don't apply for a lot of grants. We've been in operation for 16 years or so. We run our own festival, etc. The people support it. The people support the music. We get donations, some grants, but it's the people who support our organization, and we're able to teach. We go out, we do workshops and clinics, master classes. We have an intergenerational ensemble. We have We have our own annual jazz festival. We have a jazz series, a weekly jazz series every Saturday throughout the summer into the fall, and the people support it.
This is your cross-cultural connection
Yes,
incorporated. Is that correct?
yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah. Was there a a moment you remember that set you on this path?
You know, when I was in graduate school, I thought about how do I find grants for different things, you know, and because there's different kinds of programming I was thinking about wanting to do, and then it came to a point. I was invited to play at the North Sea Jazz Festival in Cape Town, and being there, I was while there the organizer asked me to be one of a clinician to do a workshop. Hotep Galeka, the pianist, a great South African pianist, he and I did a workshop for township students in Cape Town, and from that point, it was amazing. It was amazing the feeling of the teaching and the response and the passion of the students for the music and how what the music felt like for us. You know how we shared it there and from that point, then I was asked to do a few other workshops while I was there, and that's how it started. You know, so I'll say my whole piece started in South Africa, and what I wanted to do was to be able to bring people together so they had an opportunity to learn about one another by communicating with one another, not depending on what was in a newspaper or in a news broadcast. If you want to know how this person who lives in a township in South Africa how they feel about certain things, ask them. You'll have an accurate answer. You know, so we brought people together through the music, and usually a part of my sessions is we would have dialogue with one another. You know, there were folks in the session uh, who were also from South Africa who didn't know each other. They didn't know each other, but they began to talk to one another, and they found what they had in common or what they didn't have in common. You know, but what you learn, you have the ability now to understand from a clearer perspective. You know, and yeah,
We could use a good dose of that these days.
and you know this absolutely. Yeah, but that's how it started, and I but then so whenever I would go, whenever I'd be on tour, I'd make arrangements to do some teaching as well.
Hmm.
I get a lot of enjoyment out of that, and there's a lot of energy. And I I started the organization in the states in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I didn't start it in New York. Um, I started it there. It's not far from University of Iowa, but my kids were there. All right, my two sons were there, and I
Hmm.
was always making visits there. So I felt, well, let me set it up here. You know, I was connected with a number of musicians and people in the community because when I'd go there, I'd play, and we got registered there. And being a small market, there's only so much could be done. So I keep the registration there. We moved to New York. I set up here in New York as well. So and it's grown. It's grown immensely. So
Congratulations. Are your sons musical?
they both played when they were very young. But my oldest son, he's a football and track coach at his the high school he graduated from.
Yeah.
And my and his brother, who's a year and a half younger, he works for a hospice organization.
I was wondering if they or perhaps someday you might have a grandchild and Grandpa, I want to be a professional musician.
Uh,
What do you think?
what do I think? Uh, what I would tell she or he is that, well, you have to work hard, it has to be your decision. You know how you move towards that. You know, and there's certain things that you're going to need to begin to learn to prepare yourself, develop your skills. And but first, do you really love music? And let them and let them take it from there. And I'll be supportive of whichever way they go.
All right. Let me ask you about a few of the people that you've performed with. Um, Sun Ra.
Hmm.
What can you share with us about Sun Ra?
Sonny, very interesting, man. Sonny, it was it was an important it was an important time for me to meet Sonny and to I actually auditioned and to play with his group for it was a brief time, but it was the time that it was amazing. Um, he's a remarkable musician and a remarkable spirit. He has a concept that still lives today, even though he's not here. So there is something really, really special and important about him. You know, playing in that band. Well, let's see. That's where I met John Gilmore as well. And quick story: I was the newbie in the band, and I'm there waiting for it because we rehearsed and we were reading charts and stuff. Okay, I didn't have any charts when we got to the gig. I'm the only one in the section, and I'm looking around, and the cats are ignoring me. And I'm saying, I said, "Oh man, okay, here we go." And Gilmore was watching, and finally he said, "Look, man, don't worry about it. I got you." I didn't know what that was supposed to mean, but the point of it was, when the gig started, there were no charts. So what I did was I listened. I paid very close attention to John, how he handled the situation, and yeah, you had to have your big ears on, because your role was to contribute and blend in a way that Sonny needed you to blend. Like he would just point to you, and then you play. And I'm saying to myself, "What do I play?" The guy said, "Play, play what? Play, man." I said, "Okay." So yeah, so Marshall Allen, I'm checking out Marshall and Sonny and a bunch of the other cats, and Gary Bartz was in that band at that time. He was there as well, and I saw the cats trying to look at me with smiles. I said, "I guess I'm doing the right thing, man." So yeah, but it was an amazing experience, and um, Sonny had pulled me aside, and he was getting ready to do a video, a project. He said, "I got something for you. I want you to be a part of this," but it didn't happen. It didn't come to fruition because he had passed away. I didn't know. I didn't know he wasn't well at the time. But
Hmm.
yeah, that didn't happen. But that's how that was. Yeah.
That's a great memory, and I um, had the pleasure of talking with Marshall Allen, and he's quite a spirit. At the end, he said something like, "I've been doing this for 50 years. I'm still waiting to make some money."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, money wasn't the incentive to play with Sonny. No, you can forget that. But the music and the vibe and the people
Hmm.
experience, that was it. And what I learned from him is that it's not all about money. He said, what are you going to learn from this? You know, how are you going to become better um, as a person, as a musician, just a better being from being a part of this? That's what we have to look for. You know, that's what I got from the Sun Ra experience.
I see another strong personality here on your list, Bernard Purdy.
Purdy, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, Purdy. Um, yeah, Purdy's a master, man. You know, that's as simple as that. You know, um, he's strong. He's strong. He's determined. Um, uh, he knows music, and he knows what he's looking for in his sound, and he knows how to make it work. When Purdy plays, the band elevates. You know, there are a few drummers that there's I'll say, yeah, there are a few drummers that make that happen. You know, Purdy's one of them. You know, you can have a band that's playing really well, and then you stick Purdy in there, the band's going to elevate the sound, the whole thing. Another person that I experienced that with was with Bobby Durham. You know, we're playing in at the Duke de Lombard in Paris, and uh, Bobby came to sit. I said, "Yeah, man, come on, sit in, man." Actually, I wait a minute. I didn't know who he was, and one of the guys in the band did. And I said, well, man, I don't know who this cat is. He said, you want him to sit in. I said, oh, okay, I'll take your word, bro. And Bobby got there, whoo. And the drummer I had, who was a great drummer, he was, man, his eyes was like, holy smokes, man, do I still have this gig? But yeah, Bobby was he was another one of those special beings, you know, a drummer who could just lift the band. Yeah.
That's a really special way to get to know somebody. Like I
Yeah.
don't even know who this person is, and all of a sudden they're lifting you up.
Yeah, yeah, with my own music. He took my music, and he was sitting in on the tune. I called, I chose the tune that I know he could, and woof, yeah, and the feelings, holy smokes. Um,
It's a interesting thing because it's hard to really define it. It's not like they're playing louder or they're playing more.
the
Um, it's just magic.
yeah, yeah, it's what they do, how they do what they do. I put it like that. It's what they do, how they do it, and what they do.
Hmm.
And just whew, yeah. Um, Sonny Chirac taught me about that kind of thing. I studied with Sonny, the guitarist.
Yes.
Yeah, Sonny taught us about. He taught me about. I studied. I studied. I did some improv study with Sonny, and Sonny brought me through. He introduced me to five schools of jazz: Train, Miles, Monk, Ornette, and Monk, Miles, Train, Ornette. Who's the fifth one? Well, those four.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, and the thing was to get inside of that. You learn so much. You learn so much. You take compositions from any and all of them, and you learn them and you analyze them. You know, you learn the language that they're using
Hmm.
and how they're using harmonies. You know, um, how they're designing their lines, their melody lines, and their phrases. Um, and listen to the records. How they're interpreted on the recordings. You know, uh, yeah, it was. I still miss Sonny. I still miss Sonny. He was.
He wasn't on the scene all that long, was he?
No, he was. No, one would say he was kind of young when he passed, man.
Yeah.
Sonny was only 50, 52, 53 when he
Mhm.
passed. You've done work with Miles and with Herbie Mann and a bunch of others.
Yes.
Pharaoh.
If you're playing uh, an up-tempo standard that has a significant number of changes, and they're going by fairly quickly. Is it possible to tell us what's going on in your head as you're playing?
Yeah, you can slow it down. You know, slow it down. For me, I'll slow it down because I don't want to. You don't want to approach it in a frantic way. So in your head, you're slowing it down. Now the changes are moving, and the changes are moving along. Well, you um, you look at the changes, you check out the changes, and see how they connect. And where they connect. Which some are passing. Some need to be pronounced, and you hear how the rhythm is working in the time, and then so when you speak your phrases, they'll they'll fall in place. You'll fall in place. You uh, that's how I put it. I slow it down. Like you got something that's moving really fast, and then you want to kind of subdivide. You want to slow it down a little so that you hear and see everything. You know, you're going to hear. You've been. Your ears tell you a lot. Your ears tell you a lot, and then what you've been practicing, studying, you know some stuff. You don't rely totally on your ears because you got to know stuff. But what I do, my way of doing it is I'll slow it down, and mentally, even though the time didn't slow down. I'll slow it down mentally, and so I can speak to what I'm hearing. Yeah, that's how I do
Nice
it.
way to put it.
Yeah,
And you said, know you've got to know some stuff.
yeah.
What is paramount stuff for you?
Well, you got to know, like for instance, all right, like for instance, when you have two fives, right? Uh, I don't focus on the two. It's the fives that I'll focus on. Because the two is incorporated in the five. You know, that's one of the things. The Okay, the most important scale that we have is the chromatic scale. You know, because things move a half step down, half step up, and make all the difference. Okay, the next two important scales are the whole tone scale. It's an even and equal scale, six tones in each one. Everything is equal, and then the diminished, which comes from the whole tone. Two from each. It's minor thirds. So you have and in each whole tone scale, the two tones are a tritone apart. You know, and the dominant. Well, you take a diminished chord and you lower any tone a half a step, chromatic, and you got a dominant seventh. Now, the dominant seventh is our most pivotal chord. All right, and what I mean by that is there's so many different combinations. You can play dominant, you can play minor, you can play diminished, you can play half diminished, you can play diminished whole tone. Yeah, you put a flat nine or a sharp nine on there, and then you got your diminished whole tone. So this is stuff you got to know. Okay, and the most important thing is it's all connected. Nothing is disjointed. It all comes from and leads to you know, what is central, you know. So yeah, so that's some of the stuff that we want to know. Yeah, you want to know your basic six basic jazz chords and your major, dominant, minor, half diminished, diminished, and augmented. All right, then you can add then you add other combinations, or your triads, major triads, minor triads, major sixth, minor sixth, etc. You and how they work. How they work. How do we do that? Well, we isolate and we practice them, but we listen. You gotta listen to the music, and we can learn um, how it's used, how they're used, how the language is used. To connect uh, and have fun with it.
I'm glad you ended with that. That have fun with it. That's
Yeah, well, I have
thank you.
fun with this stuff, man. Yeah, I have fun with this stuff.
Good.
Uh, you know, excuse me. There aren't as many opportunities for musicians to go out and to jam. You know, there used to be, used to be a lot more. There's still some, but you got to get out and play with cats. You know, even now, you go places and you go play, man. You hear what, and that's important. I'll finish a gig and then find out where cats are playing a little later, and go and listen. If there's an option, I'll go sit in, and then, yeah, you hear how cats are handling the language, man.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me wrap up with asking you what it's been like to you had a long tenure with the Harlem Blues and Jazz Band and shared the stage with some older gentlemen. I wonder what that's been like.
It's been wonderful. You know, I came into that band as the baby.
Hmm.
uh, Doc came to one of the sessions, the jam sessions at the Union Hall, and that's where he heard me. And he liked what I was doing, and he spoke with me, and he pulled me in as a backup or sub for Fred
Right,
State.
Stanton, yeah, Staten.
Yeah, yeah, because Fred was, his health was starting to be more challenged, you know, and that was, that's and Joey Morantz was there, and Art Barron on trombone. Now Art had he he played with in the Ellington band when Duke was still leading it. He's got a lot of experience, man, and the stories and uh, great musician. You know, Jackie, yeah, Jackie on drums. The stories these cats had, and you learn, man. It's all about learning. Zeke Mullins, you know, Zeke was Hamp's piano player for what, 20 something years. And Zeke, Uncle Zeke, man, uh, they're really great. They're really great guys. And at the time, Ruth Brisbane was singing, and I love her voice. I
Hmm.
loved her voice, and wow, she was a
Yeah,
sweet.
she had that church gospel combination with Pigfoot and a bottle of beer or something like that.
Bigfoot in the bottle of beer. Okay, okay. Oh, man. Okay. It's all true. What you said, it is true. She had all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the church, the Bigfoot, and the bottle of beer. She had it all, and she could bring it, man. She could simply bring it, and she was a sweetheart. I really loved her, and uh, when it was time for her to sing, man, I would, I'd lay back and just listen, and it inspired notes for me to play underneath her too. The way she did it fit that tenor sound. Yeah, yeah, it was wonderful. And what's it? We did some, the tours that we did when I was with them. We were in Europe a few times. We Denmark, Sweden. Uh, we had like a 12-day tour in Russia in December. But
Whoa.
you know something? It was colder in New York that year in December than it was in Russia at that time. Yeah, yeah, it was colder here than we but it was a great show. We played the venues were amazing. Yeah, I mean concert halls.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, they had us in concert halls. Flew us. Well, Russia is huge anyway. You fly for 3 4 hours, then you take an overnight train. You're still in Russia. You know those kind of things. And yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'd give Dr. Valmer a lot of credit for the audaciousness of sort of what he does in the handling the logistics and all that. It's a lot of
yeah.
passion there.
Well, you know, Doc was part of the show as well because it was important. Doc made a point of informing the audience of the history and the importance of the development of the band in this sound and this music. He made his opening remarks were very powerful and very much needed. And uh, the way he pulled people and the way he cared about people. Doc cares about people. You know, um, Doc would make sure cats had. He would make sure there were gigs because he said these musicians who made all this great music, they're not appreciated anymore. I have to find a way to keep them in the public eye because that's where they deserve to be, and that's how he created the band
Hmm.
and kept it going 40 something years. We're actually excuse me. He called on me to kind of help out with some things with some bookings when we can, and we're going to be playing on the 2nd of July in Peekskill as part of the Cross Cultural Connection Saturday Night Series. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to be at the New Rochelle Library in December. We booked that one. We were down in the Rocky Mountain uh, for the Monk Festival last year. Yeah, we went down. Yeah, down in North Carolina. We went down there,
Wow.
and yeah, uh, yeah. Now that uh, Zeke isn't with us anymore. Danny Mixon plays piano
Hmm.
with us now. Yeah. We also, oh yeah, there were a couple of other trombone players too, and we with Ron Wilkins, phenomenal trombone player. Uh, Clarence Banks, he went down to Carolina with us. He's with the Basie band, and yeah, he played with us as well. Um, yeah, it's been really nice, So we're keeping things going. That's
Amazing.
keeping things going. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for your time and for your significant contributions to the music. You've found a way to perform and sort of do public service and keep the music alive, and I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much, man. I'm enjoying every moment of it. I'm fortunate, Monk. I'm doing what I love to do. I can't see doing it any other way. People say, "Oh, you're lucky to be able to do it." Well, it's a choice I made. And for anyone who does this, it's a choice we make.
Mhm.
As with yourself, you made choices that kept you involved in uh, keeping the history, the music, all of this, the education, the passing on information, keeping all of that alive and moving along. And so here we are.
Here we are, and I've quoted a few musicians today, so I'm going to quote one more. This is a quote from Ray Blue. To be able to work at what you love and make it your life's work is a blessing.
Very
So,
well said.
well said indeed.
It is true.
Okay.
It is true. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.